just wanted to have a chat about a recent photo shoot I did for basically a hair campaign last week, and I kind of wanted to just go through, start to finish what was involved and that sort of thing, just to kind of give people an overview, and also if anybody has any questions about the process or ideas or reasons for anything that was done, then we can obviously have a chat about that. By all means, fire away. So client gets in touch, organised dates, times, prices. Prices are all signed off. Everybody's good to go. Now we need to kind of work out what's going on with the actual shoot itself. Like what is involved? What do they want? How do we kind of get there, right? So for the most part, it can typically start off with just a mood board in general from the client, right? And then it's up to you, the photographer, to kind of interpret what that means. And the reason you're kind of having to interpret what that means is because it's extremely rare that they'll find an image that is exactly what they want. And really, you don't want to be copying somebody else's work anyway, right? So the reason of a mood board is to kind of give you lots and lots of little ideas to kind of then work on the final idea that they want, right? So, for example, like here we've got these real strong shadows, geometric shadows. We've got some texture back here. We've got some texture here. We've got this again with the shadows, right? So there's a running theme here, and this kind of geometric shapes, a lot of them as well. So a couple of things we needed to iron out from my point of view as a studio photographer is, look, a lot of these are daylight images, which, okay, not the end of the world, but trying to recreate daylight in a studio is nigh on impossible. There's a couple of reasons for that. One of which is daylight is an extremely hard light, right? So it's razor sharp shadows, and its exposure drop off is almost non-existent, right? So the inverse square law to us on Earth dealing with sunlight is non-existent, right? So what I mean by that is you can go outside tomorrow and stand in your garden, and then a friend of yours can stand in the county over, and you'll be exactly the same exposure, right? There is no exposure drop off, right, to us on planet Earth. So that means that daylight for full body shots, super easy, right? You don't have, like, the feet are going to be exactly the same exposure as the head. Nothing to worry about. That's actually far harder than you think to achieve in a studio with a hard light, right? So there's a couple of things that I'm kind of red flags that I need to think about. This is achievable in a studio. I just kind of have to use like 3 lights rather than the one sunlight to kind of achieve it. But yeah, so that's something to think about. The other thing here is going to be texture, right? I need to try and interpret what they want by this texture, because it turned out that these kind of Venetian blind effect that we're seeing, these lines and that sort of thing, kind of like the idea of them just being on the background, didn't really want them on the subject. Okay, cool. So that's easy enough. We can start to do that with some gobos, bring those in, and then just pull the model off the background, and then we can have this kind of effect on the background, but not affecting the model. The other things here is going to be color. Again, color was not something that they were after. They were just using it for these kind of swipes of light and shadow that they kind of liked. And again, here, light and shadow. The other thing as well is that, so these are my notes here on the right from the time, is just thinking about concerns, is this is a hair campaign. A lot of this is very contrasty light. As a result, you end up with a lot of contrast, means a lot of blacks, right? A lot of clipped data, which we can see here. So in practically all of these shots, there is almost no data in the hair. So I have to kind of translate that into, look, I love these shots, but we can't really use them in their current form to photograph hair, because we just won't be able to see any data in the hair. Unless you want to do something like geometric with the hair and go pure avant-garde with these crony, like, wacky silhouettes and stuff, that's cool, but for the most part, we need to be mindful of there's no data in the hair in here. So yes, we can go for this strong light, but in my mind, it's like we also need a ton of fill light, right? We need that fill light to be able to see the data in the hair, okay? So the other thing here that kept coming up is this texture, right? We got this concrete. I absolutely love this concrete. It'd be beautiful to use. Again, daylight, we can see very, very clean, razor sharp shadows, no exposure drop off. Cool, but we don't have, we can't shoot in daylight, and we don't have access to this concrete wall. So, and again, textures, right? So a lot of textures in the background. So me going away and kind of coming up with something that we can do with that. So that's that, right? So we're working out the mood board and that sort of stuff, and then we can kind of look at the space we have, right? So this is the data that I was given for the space that we're working with. So it looks like they actually already have backdrops and stuff here. Okay, cool. But we also have a lot of windows here. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because as somebody who shoots with LEDs now, I'm super concerned with every kind of on-site location that I work in. Is like, how bright is it going to be? How dark can I make it? Now, years ago, if I was shooting flash, I wouldn't need to worry about this. Okay, so this is something that you guys need to kind of think about. It's something that I need to think about. Is it worth it? Do I really need to use LEDs? Should I just bring the flashes? Can we make it dark? It's kind of annoying that we have to go through this process. And I jumped on a video call and I was like, I need to see, the room. How dark can we make it? So they sent some shots with the blinds down. I think we're good, right? Even like space behind, easy to cover up. So ultimately, I was absolutely fine bringing in the LEDs, but years ago I wouldn't have even had to ask that question with flash, right? It would have been a non-issue. But something that I need to be mindful of now when I'm organizing a shoot. So, okay, I got the space. It's from here that I am going to then go away and start to generate some kind of three-dimensional drawing, three-dimensional setups of that environment to kind of give me an idea of the space that we're using, and kind of put together a couple of setups that I think could work, right? So we're going to be using like the hard light, which we can see there, and then filling it in with, big umbrella here, fill light. But again, this 3D space is created in a piece of software called Satellite 3D. Very easy to use. Didn't take long to put this together, and I didn't have any measurements from the guy. I'm just using it. I'm just working it out by eye. There are kind of standard measurements for windows and doors that you kind of know, and as soon as you input them in, we've got 2 windows, space either side. So I was able to build that 3D diagram based on the photos that they'd given me. So this now gives me some way to start planning some shots and working out some setups and seeing what we can do in the space that we have. Can I shoot 105mm lens, for example, right? How far can I get back? Is it realistic? How high are the ceilings, right? Can I bring the model quite far forward to get a lot of separation between model and background without seeing the background above? So these sorts of things are useful, and then it's also useful to kind of throw together a couple of ideas to then send the client, right, and go, look, we're going in the right direction. What are we doing? How's it looking? Is this good? Is this not what you were thinking? And bring us over to what you can see. So, for example, this sort of thing was cool. This is kind of one of the ideas we kind of ended up with in the end, right? These sorts of things weren't working. You didn't want this much color in it. So, too much color needed to be way more muted than that. Needed to be pretty knocked back. This one here as well. It's like, yeah, kind of like the pattern and stuff, but I don't want it on the model. Pattern can be on the background, right? And again, similar sort of thing, right? So we're just playing with these different shapes, showing some examples of what we can do with gobos and that sort of stuff in the space that we have. And again, messing around with colored light and gobos and bits and pieces like that. Okay. So this is really useful so that everybody is kind of pretty much signed off before you arrive on the day of what you're doing and what you're getting. We got like 4 models. We know what the models are going to be. We know what we know what the hair's going to be and that stuff. We can start formulating these ideas. There's no point in me setting this up on the day and then going, no, I kind of wanted it on the background. You can kind of iron out all these issues before you start shooting, right? And this is ultimately kind of where we ended up, right? In terms of like just subtle enough. Didn't want too much color, but just enough. Keep it clean. Right. I'll just check we don't have any questions before we carry on. I think we're good. Hey, morning, mate. How you doing? Gosh, we were all getting recommended the same things on Pinterest to see those images last week. Yeah, it weren't my images, but yeah. How big is a big umbrella for the fill light? probably in centimeters. 210 maybe, 210. Yeah, yep, yep. Okay. So one other thing that I wanted to kind of do, and one thing I was kind of concerned about, and I know from experience, is that these backdrops, they were like, yeah, we want a nice clean backdrop. I know that these coloramas, I can kind of see that it's, you know, it's probably a normal colorama, but it's thin, right? We can see the light coming through it. I can kind of see that these crossbars here are kind of a little bit warped. This is you know, this is one of the spaces in the hair salon, probably doesn't get used a lot. So in my mind, I'm very cautious of using this background, because I know that when we unfurl that, it'll probably have kinks in it because it's been there for a while. It's probably gone oval as it's hung there and that sort of stuff. It's not particularly thick. So my experience tells me that I'm concerned about using that, even though they're like we have a white background there. So one thing that I did, correct, Vlad, correct, yeah. So one thing that I went away and did is, let's have a look. So I went away and bought a window blind, right? It's just a regular window blind off Amazon for like, just a white window blind for like 25 quid or something like that. As you know, as big as I could get. So like 3 meters wide by 2 meter drop, right? And then I painted it with quite thick outside emulsion paint to try and get this texture, right? And I painted it several times, and yeah, here we go. Yeah, right. So I painted it several times. So this had a lot of kind of texture to it in the end, right? And I was just using, in the end, I was trying all sorts of different textured rollers and, you know, brushes and that sort of stuff. In the end, just using an actual mop brush, or brush that you would brush the floor with these dense bristles, kind of gave the best kind of results. I wanted that kind of very, very textured look. Okay, and again, yeah, so just white exterior masonry paint that says it's textured, and it did have a lot of kind of speckles in it. You know, not a huge amount, but certainly enough for what I wanted. And you can see here, lying on the floor, you know, it's got a lot of texture back there. I got to say, this was actually super useful on the day. I'm really pleased I took the time and effort to do this beforehand, because I didn't kind of give them too much warning on this. I was like, I'll bring it along, we'll try it. But yeah, so I had tested it out beforehand. So I tested it out just to see what it was kind of looking like, and like immediately one of the things that I could see was it's kind of, I mean, yeah, that looks cool there, and it kind of works if you're slightly tighter on the aperture, right? So f4, 5.6, f8, something like that, as opposed to, you know, one where you're very, very shallow there. Were these all f4, f8, something like that? That's f6, whatever that is. But yeah, some of these I was testing with different apertures, but to really see this background, I think, you know, I ended up being at 5.6 or something like that. Yeah, which is probably what that is. Yeah. So just playing with some ideas, and yeah, so here you can kind of see the texture working with there. So still flat, but got enough of a texture that's not like just a white colorama. Definitely got something a little bit of, you know, interest with it for sure, right? Oh, and these are just the gobos that I was going to be bringing along. Okay, so just that, all set already, all signed off. Everybody kind of knows what they're doing, all good. So kind of setting out, we can see the background there, right? So we can see we got this texture here, right? So you can see it hanging up there. And again, just using some C-stands there and bringing it in. So the background itself is just being suspended with a couple of light stands, and then some booms from C-stands there, okay? There's a few things going on here, right? Getting in, setting up the backdrop, and I immediately saw that it would be cool to actually bring in some plants. I hadn't intended it, but actually using real life plants here as well, rather than just relying on the gobo. So the other thing, I'm holding stuff in front of the lens here, which I'll explain in a second. I'm just doing tests with different things in front of the lens. But yeah, one one of the things that I noticed when I was shooting this was it kind of was looking a little bit fake, right? What I mean is just like, this is what I hate about gobos, and I see people using gobos all the time, and it just always looks like a gobo. So I'm always really kind of wary of that. So the plant helped to break that up as well, right? So the plant made it feel a little bit more textured, as it were. You know, we're trying a couple of different things there. But what I'm also doing is I'm also trying to fade off one of the sides of this gobo. So it's not just plastered on. You know, I've got it at a quite acute angle. I don't think, can you see it in some of these? Yeah, there you go, up here. So it's kind of, you know, it's not way behind me shooting at the wall. It's kind of at more of an acute angle coming across the room, and that means that we kind of get this cool, interesting slant. And then what I'm doing here is, this is a Rotolite EOS 2 Pro. I'm bouncing off a white sheet on this side, and I'm just trying to take off the edge of that gobo, right? I'm just trying to soften the edge of that gobo with some light from that side. I'm trying to bounce in some light on this side, just to take the edge off. So it's, rather than it just being this kind of very stark, stuck on kind of look, I was just using that to kind of soften it on that side, right? So just to give it a little bit more interest. So you can see it there, right? So quite strong here, and then it fades off as we go across the shot. Okay. So that's the gobo. So we know where that is over on camera left. We're shooting it through a plant. We brought in some stuff here to bring out the plant so we can get that in the background. Now we need to light the model. So again, I'm using another EOS 2 Pro here. Right, Rotolite EOS 2 Pro here, bringing that in. That's what's illuminating her here, right? And then the fill light for the room is this beautiful lantern. Right, beautiful lantern here. Now, ideally, I would have that suspended in the room on a C-stand and boom and that sort of stuff, but didn't have that ability in the space. So I was just kind of pointing it straight in there. And then what I'm also doing is these are mirrors. You've got to be in hair salons are a nightmare for this, but there's always mirrors in hair salons. So I'm always kind of, you see it like down here, I've covered up the mirror here, I've covered up the mirror there. And then here I've just hung up these white curtains that I brought. I thought maybe I'd use them as a background, but instead I've ended up using them as like a fill light, just to kind of have this light bouncing around a little bit more, just to soften where the light's going. And it also means that we don't get any harsh light coming off the mirrors there. Okay, so this is our fill light, bringing that in, and we have one more light, and that's this fella here. You guys have seen me singing the praises of this in the past. I love this little thing up here. This is the Nanlite the FC120 or F120C or whatever it is. So 120 watt little light, weighs next to nothing, like weighs probably less than a speed light, and then it's got its own little spotlight on there, and that is what's shining at me, right? Boom. This was shining at me, right? So it's doing nothing else apart from illuminating me and the camera lens, and that is what this is here, right? So this is like a little bit of fabric that I'm holding, like white fabric, and then the reason it's brown here is because I'm shining like 3000 Kelvin on the white fabric, which is highlighting it in front of the lens here, and then here it's exactly the same fabric, but I'm changing the color of the Kelvin of this light, right? So this light that's firing at me, that's the one I'm changing the Kelvin of, and that's how I'm able to get the flare to begin with, and also change the color of the foreground element that's actually in the shot. Okay. Okay. Any questions so far? All good? Everybody up to speed on that? Let me just, I got an Instagram thing here. Let's have a look. So these are from stories on the day, what we got. So yeah, let me just, I will just turn this down. I don't think it's got any audio, but just in case. So these are stories on the day. So yeah, so this is the kit that I brought. This is the space, right? So a lot of kit, and then the space, and then this is the background. So you can see I'm just using the crossbar that comes with a, like the boom arm that comes with a C-stand, and it's just in the knuckle there. And then it's just slotted down the, because this is a window blind, remember? This is not like a designated blind or anything like that. Yeah. And that's the blind on there. And this is the lantern. So you can see, look, it's pretty good, right? In terms of hotspots. Pretty impressive. I tell you, like, it's rare that I get a chance to use, like I said there, it's rare that I get a chance to use this thing, but this is really good. This lantern is absolutely beautiful, especially if you're looking for environmental light. So what I mean by that is this is kind of sending light everywhere, and it's fine. I mean, I'm controlling the light here because of the white sheet here, so I'm kind of bouncing it around, so you're actually able to get a very, very, very soft light. Yeah. So Vlad pointed out the fact that I'm using like a huge umbrella in the diagram. Kind of turned out that you really didn't have the room for me to be there with the lens being straight on, which is what they wanted, kind of being straight on. Whereas in a lot of the renders, I'm kind of off to the side of the umbrella and that sort of thing. So this lantern was kind of, it actually ended up being better, far softer fill light, right? But yeah, you see, it's like almost no hotspot on there, right? Beautiful. Even when I'm looking straight at it, look. Pretty good, man, pretty good. And then, you know, again, like the setup, which we've just been speaking about, we can see there, you can see it fading off towards the right hand side because of that light being bounced into the white sheet on the right hand side, right? Got the plant there. So here we can see the light that's pointed at me. So where this is, you know, this is another spot. It's very controlled onto me. It's not bouncing around the room. It's really only hitting me with the camera and the fabric that I'm holding in front of the lens. Okay. And again, we can see we've got the plant stuff there. So it's changed up, different model coming through there. Yeah. Yeah. Let's check the questions here. So should I get a lantern or 130 umbrella? So the umbrella is good for a studio. The lantern I love for environmental shots because it takes on the qualities of the room that you're in. So typically you saw where we were back here, right? Yeah, there it was. Yeah, so you can see like it's going everywhere, and it's going everywhere incredibly evenly. So if you can control that and manage that, it's actually kind of nice, because if you've got, let's say you're on location and the walls are kind of slightly warmer, right, then it's going to bounce around the room that you're in, so it's going to give you more of an environmental fill light. So I think if you were shooting cinema and that sort of stuff, like cinematic shots, the lantern is great for that because it takes on the properties of the room that you're in, whereas an umbrella is actually way more controlled and can be a bit stark. Ultimately you need both, but I think it depends on the type of stuff that you're shooting. Yeah. Yeah. I was actually really surprised at how well it worked coming through these plants, you know. And again, this is one of those things where people are like, oh, you have these 3D designs and everything's signed off and that sort of thing, and then you always have to be open to improving the shot on the day, right? You always have to be looking at ways that you can improve it. You're arriving with the kind of the bare minimum, right? If everything else fails, you have your bare minimum shot that you can get. You always want to be looking to interpret and change that on the day. And then this is that's a situation. I saw some plants in the corner and I was like, that could be cool, man. That I could really try and, you know, break this up, and it ended up working really well. You know. So again, changed it again now. So now we're going to go into more of a slot type look. This was absolutely my favorite. This was gorgeous. This setup with the slot, and I'm kind of more of a fan of this over the gobos personally. But you know, it's always good to have options, right? So you see coming through that plant there. It's just a little bit of breakup here on the background, right? Just a little bit of breakup, very out of focus. Really nice. Yeah, really nice. Yeah. And there's just some messing around with some Polaroids on the day. I think that's probably it. Oh yeah, just the old steam engine there. Life in the old girl, yeah. So yeah, okay. So that's that. That was kind of the breakdown on the day. The lantern reminds me a bit of the classic IKEA lantern every student had in their bedrooms in the early 2000s. It's called exactly the same, China lantern, which is what they were called from IKEA as well. Do you know? So yeah, and because they were made of paper, right? So yeah. I mean, I don't need to tell you that that's not ideal, but you're absolutely right. It's exactly the same thing. It's just that these ones are encased as well, so there is no hotspot coming down, because those IKEA ones had holes in them to let heat out and that sort of stuff. Yeah. You know, I made a video on how Planet and Hard Light is amazing a few months ago. I'm sure you did, mate. I'm sure you did. Yeah. Yeah. So let's have a look then. Let's have a look at Lightroom. Yeah. So again, this is the and you can really see that background texture really kind of paying off there now. Yeah, really good. So these were the ones that we were kind of playing with. So this is what I was talking about. So AI culling would kind of remove this movement, right? It's just kind of this in between pose, which I thought was really cool. But yeah. So again, here you go. Yeah, so these are the raws here with the shots just coming across. So the one thing you might be thinking about here then is we've got a couple of things going on with the color, right? So the camera itself is probably at about 4,700 Kelvin, right? That's what the camera is at. The fill light, which if you remember is the lantern, right? So the lantern is very cold, because we can see how cold the color is here. So that's not a gel, that's going to be Kelvin, right? So if we shift the Kelvin of our fill light versus our camera, that's how we can get those color shifts. So here the lantern is about 6,500 Kelvin, right? So the lantern's about 6,500 Kelvin. Now the gobo light, or the hard light that's coming in from the left hand side here, is probably looking at around about 4,000, 3,500 Kelvin, right? So you've got the warmth from the slot, right, the gobo, which is about, what did I say, 3,500 Kelvin, something like that. You've got the fill light, which is going to be your 6,500 Kelvin as well, right? And then you're putting your camera in the middle so that you can see both of those colors, right? And this is where we ultimately ended up here. You know, this beautiful kind of warmth on the skin here from that on the left hand side, and then we have our lantern doing the work here with these beautiful blues and the fill color. But you can see like that texture doing a lot of the work here. So the 85mm f4, right, ISO 200. So and here we can start to see this is the fabric in all these shots, right? The fabric. Now the light that's being pointed at me is the same color as the lantern, right? 6,500, right? So this fella here, 6,500. And that's how we're able to get this kind of beautiful glow coming in from the bottom there. Yeah, very, very, very cool. Yeah. So yeah, this was interesting, man. This is a little bit out of my comfort zone in terms of the style, because you know me, I absolutely crutch on the colors, right? But this was more of a subtle approach to the colors. Absolutely loved it. And look, I'm not saying this wouldn't be possible with Flash, but it would have been a pain in the ass because of the CTOs and CTB gels that you'd need for those. And you can go, well, yeah, like you can gel flashes, of course you can. Gelling that lantern would have been a pain in the ass, and you'd go, okay, well then you just switch to the umbrella, maybe something like that. You just kind of suck it up and make that adjustment there. You'd need a whole bunch of kind of more narrowed CTO and CTB gels than I have. I have like full tungsten, full like daylight and beyond. But I won't lie, like the LED lights here was a lot of fun to play with, because you can really tweak and dial in every single Kelvin. And I was kind of tweaking the Kelvins on all of these lights the whole time, which you can't do with Flash. So look, you guys know my opinion on LEDs, and sure, it meant like an extra phone call, calling him, going, look, how much light is in that room? Can we get away with it? So it meant an extra phone call from there. But once all that's squared away, like having the LEDs there was just so much easier. Not having to worry about any CTBs or CTOs is absolutely huge. Yeah, really, really good. Yeah. So this is the movement of LEDs, right? And look, it's not going to be for everybody, but there is something about this. And look, I think I mentioned it earlier on, but Peter Coulson, he's literally just done a video on this where he's using LEDs. I think he typically uses flash. He's playing with the nanlight panels, and he's shooting on that Hasselblad watch, even at 250th of a second, and he's got movement in the hair, and he's going, you know, I'm pretty into it, right? So look, it's not always about it being crystal clear and pin sharp the whole time. It is just having about a little bit of energy. I mean, this is sharp, but sometimes a little bit of energy, a little bit of motion, you know, because she's between poses here, right? That's what I'm trying to capture, is kind of this between pose sometimes where you get something unique. And kind of this is where the magic happens for me, right? When you're working with somebody like this, she's going through poses or routine or whatever, and you're just kind of capturing these in-between moments. Sometimes is where the real magic is, right? It's not always about everything being set up and posed and perfect. Sometimes it's about just trying to capture something that is kind of more unique, you know? So definitely a lot of fun. Look, you know, I'm enjoying LEDs. There is a little bit of a learning curve with them, a little bit of stress if there's like, oh my God, there's not as many crystal pin sharp images as with flash, but you know, something to play with and consider, you know. I think you saw some of these retouched a minute ago. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. I think I played with some of these at the end. Yeah. Oh yeah, I brought this into Photoshop a minute ago. Yeah. So pretty clean, but yeah, very very striking. Very very kind of editorial. Really really nice. Yeah.